It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew DiCecco.
My first allegiance is what will be best for the Philadelphia Eagles and our fans for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which dropped this morning. A look at the NFL draft, which is tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, you can hear all the coverage starting at 7 o'clock. The NFL draft coverage on 97.3 ESPN is brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call to GMS Law. 4 convenient locations to serve you online, gmslaw.com. Mike Gill, Andrew DiCecco is here. The final time before the NFL draft as Andrew and all guests appear via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Merry Christmas, Andrew.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
It's going good. I know this is – how do you wake up on draft day? A little differently from others?
You have trouble sleeping the night before because you put so much preparation into this, and you're excited to see how everything sort of materializes. But it's just it's an eventful day.
Sure is. It's been an eventful time. How about Aaron Rodgers wanting to be traded? I mean, are the Green Bay Packers phone, is it blowing off the hook right now?
I have to imagine that it is. I mean, you're talking about the best quarterback in football, or certainly in top consideration. So, I mean, you'd be a fool not to if you're a team in need.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So let's start there before we look at this draft, because this comes into play at the last minute. Aaron Rodgers tells, hey, by the way, I don't want to play for you anymore. If you're the Jets, if you're San Francisco, and you're drafting a quarterback tonight, are you offering spot 2 or 3 to get Aaron Rodgers in lieu of taking a quarterback?
I think if you're a team like the Jets, you're more than Aaron Rodgers away from being a legitimate contender. So, I mean, do you really want to invest that in, that type of draft capital in Aaron Rodgers and waste, a couple of his prime years when you still have so much more to build, to build out the rest of the roster? And I don't know that I think that it would make much more sense from their vantage point to draft a young quarterback to sort of build around. Yeah, as they continue to build up the rest of the roster.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, the 49ers are in an interesting spot, though. This is a team that went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, had all sorts of injuries last year. I mean, would you, if you're them, hey, we're at number 3. We went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. We had a lot of injuries last year. Are we Aaron Rodgers away? Are they Aaron Rodgers away? Would you trade the 3rd pick?
Yeah, now see that one's interesting because they do have some pieces on the defensive side of the ball. They have Deebo Samuel, they have Brandon Ayuk, they have a number of intriguing offensive weapons. So they're a team that would make a lot more sense than, let's say, the New York Jets. So I mean that's certainly one to watch. I don't know that Green Bay is going to. Green Bay is still, the window is still very much open for them. So I don't know how inclined they're going to be to sort of unload a premium quarterback like Aaron Rodgers when we know how hard it is to get one in the draft. I mean, they did draft Jordan Love last year, but I mean, by all accounts, he's still a ways away from being able to step in and lead an offense.
If you're Philadelphia, you have the 12th pick. We've heard so much, Andrew, about is Hurts the guy. There's still some speculation that, hey, they would trade for a quarterback, or if there was one on the board, I should say trade up to take a quarterback, or if one of the quarterbacks was on the board at 12. They have a lot of – the Eagles certainly have the ammunition to get it done. Should they consider it?
Well, I'm sure they're going to consider it, but if you're Aaron Rodgers, why would you want to go to a team like Philadelphia that still is going to be probably 2 years away and doesn't really have much in terms of building blocks, and they're still a team in transition? And if you're the Eagles, why would you want to invest in Aaron Rodgers when you know that you're probably going to waste some of his prime years here? I mean, given all the other holes and deficiencies that kind of plague the roster, it just wouldn't make a ton of sense to me, as good as he is.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, a lot of questions before the draft. Which questions in your mind are still lingering out there as the first pick will be announced in about 4 hours from now?
Well, I think the Carolina Panthers represent the great unknown there at 8. Now that they've acquired Sam Darnold, it's kind of like, okay, well, they can go a number of different ways. So that's certainly going to weaken the talent pool when it comes to Philadelphia at 12. I also think that now the Denver Broncos at 9, they seem to me to be an ideal fit for a Micah Parsons now. I mean, not to say that adding Teddy Bridgewater should completely change their plan if they were going to go the way of a quarterback. But I mean, it's certainly, as I've written about, Teddy Bridgewater can certainly bridge the gap until, in the meantime, while they address other areas of their roster. So I think that sort of opens the door now to add a key piece like a Micah Parsons. And also the Dallas Cowboys, to me, strike me as a team that is going to pounce on one of those two corners should they have that opportunity at number 10. And I think if the Eagles want to get a Patrick Surtain or if they want to get a J.C. Horn, they're going to have to look at the Carolina Panthers or the Denver Broncos as trade partners to leapfrog Dallas there.
Yeah, Denver's interesting now. And by the way, if you're Denver, you went down the road of Peyton Manning in the past. I mean, do you call and offer number 9 and whatever else you can to Green Bay?
I mean, it certainly can't hurt. I mean, they have offensive pieces. We know that. They spent the last 2 years adding guys like Noah Fant, and they have Cortland Sutton there. And they have a pair of running backs, and, they added Hamler last season as well. So, and Judy, I mean, that would be an intriguing destination. And then on defense, of course, you still have guys like Von Miller, and they added Ronald Darby and, who else are they? Kyle Fuller. So they do have some guys there that if they add a quarterback, they can certainly make a run.
Yeah, I think Pro Football Focus ranked all the rosters in the league and had their roster ranked 6th. It's just that their quarterback is ranked at the bottom. So essentially, they're saying if you gave them a quarterback, this is a pretty good roster. They're just a quarterback short. I think Denver, very interesting and intriguing here. All right, so let's go inside the division here. Number 10, Dallas. So what say you about what are their options and what's most likely?
I think Rashawn Slater's an option for them. I also think that more than likely, I think that when you look at where their deficiencies lie, their defense is extremely putrid, and it has been for quite some time, especially on the back end. They're going to, in all likelihood, have their option probably have the second corner, which would most likely be J.C. Horn, that might fall right into Jerry Jones's lap. So I think, and knowing that their division rival, the Philadelphia Eagles, are also in need of a corner, I think that might be a little bit of payback when the Eagles got Dallas Goedert. That they're going to be in position to do that. And I think that would make the most sense, and that's kind of how I envision them going.
All right, tonight, Josh will be talking with Ann Fitzsimmons during game night. Now, he recorded that interview earlier in the day. I want you to listen, Andrew, to what he had to say about the Cowboys pick. Take a listen.
There is a connection here between Dan Quinn, the new defensive coordinator for the Cowboys, and Will Muschamp. They go back a long ways. Will Muschamp, the former head coach of South Carolina. So there's a J.C. Horn connection. Also, Mike McCarthy, head coach now of the Cowboys, he was the offensive coordinator for 4 years when Joe Horn was with the New Orleans Saints. So you have JC's dad and the head coach, and then the defensive coordinator and Horn's coach at South Carolina that have a deep connection.
So Horn, Patrick Surtain, who's more likely to be the corner taken by Dallas if they go that direction?
Yeah, all those comments were all good and well, but I mean, the main point is that J.C. Horn would, in all likelihood, fill a need for Dallas, and he's going to likely be the best player on the board. So it would make the most amount of sense regardless of the connections. And I think, in my opinion, he would be the guy. So, like I was saying, if the Eagles want to get one of those corners, they're going to have to get to at least 8 or 9 in order to confidently secure one of those guys.
So at this point, you don't think a corner will be there at number 12, one that they want anyway?
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to seem that way. And then, there's also the school of thought that, if the Eagles don't see the value there at 12 based on how the board shakes out, they could opt to trade down and go with a guy like Greg Newsome, who would be in that next tier, or maybe a Kwity Paye. But the first round there's always a lot of curveballs in that top 10, so it's really hard to predict. But it wouldn't surprise me if Dallas gets that corner, all of a sudden, it incites a domino effect where all of a sudden the Eagles are like, well, we're not crazy about the value here, and there's a couple guys that we like and we can probably get if we drop down a little bit, and those would be two guys that I would look for if that's the case.
Okay, interesting there. So Dallas, let's go to the Giants, and Andrew, obviously the Giants have a lot of holes. They're getting better. This is a team that got better last year, but still in a bad division. So in your mind, what is Dave Gettleman thinking about right now at number 11?
Well, at number 11, that's another opportunity to possibly add, if Denver doesn't do so, I think that's going to be an interesting destination for a Micah Parsons. The Giants, I don't necessarily put them in that defensive back. I don't think that they're necessarily going to threaten as far as a team that's going to bring in one of those corners. I mean, when you look at what they have James Bradbury. They drafted Darnay Holmes last season. They signed Adoree Jackson. But when you look at their linebacking situation, they only have, I believe it's Ryan Anderson, Blake Martinez, and Lorenzo Carter there. That could really stand to upgrade in terms of athleticism and just an overall, building block and just overall. None of those guys run particularly well, and I think that they really need to upgrade just athletically there at that second level. And Micah Parsons to me makes the most sense at number 11 if he's available.
I like Parsons, and I would not like to see him wearing a Giants uniform. I can tell you that much because I think he's going to be excellent. What about offensive line for them? I would imagine they're in play there too. No.
Oh, they're always in play for the Giants. The Giants, the Vikings, and the Bengals are always teams that seem to have perpetual issues with the offensive line. So I mean, they're always going to be. Rashawn Slater will be in the conversation. I still think it's a little early for Darisaw, but those are a couple guys that I certainly can see in contention there. But I still think that'd be a little bit of a reach for the tackle there, Darisaw. I would say Slater or Michael Parsons.
On the latest Inside the Birds podcast, Adam Kaplan said that the Lions had the 7th pick, want to move down. If you're Howie Roseman and you're calling the Lions, it's to move up for what?
Well, it would have to be an offensive skill player, in my opinion. A blue chip guy and still at 7, it's still a risk because will a Jamar Chase be available? Will Kyle Pitts be available? That's far from a certainty. Kyle Pitts could go as high as 4, and Jamar Chase could very easily go 6. And I think if you're going to move up and give up that kind of capital, I think that you're only doing so for 2 guys that are going to be, bona fide studs, all pros, and kind of lead one of those type of careers. Those are the only 2 guys that I would find to be, worth moving up for.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4 here, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, as we take a look at what might happen tonight. You heard some of the questions he still has, the Eagles moving up or down. That remains to be seen. We know, but Lawrence 1, who goes 2 in your mind?
In my opinion, it's going to be Zach Wilson, but I think that it should be.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Zach Wilson, but I think it should be Justin Fields.
I was going to say, who should it be?
Justin Fields. Justin Fields is a better quarterback.
So we go back to then, if Fields is on the board at 12, the Eagles have to take him?
I think you strongly have to consider it. I don't think that there's any chance that he's. You know what? I hate speaking in absolutes. I think it's very unlikely that he would be available at 12. I think then you're Howie Roseman. You're going to start entertaining phone calls, and then you're going to have a lot of teams looking to move up, such as the Patriots at 15, the Chicago Bears at 20. I mean, the Eagles would be in a very desirable spot.
If they trade up to 7, do they have to take Fields?
I think that why would you do that? Why would you trade up unless you're sure that he's an upgrade, a substantial upgrade over Jalen Hurts? Why would you do so for another quarterback? I mean, I would always surround your current quarterback with the proper weapons that he needs to be successful.
Yeah. I'm just kind of listening to you saying they shouldn't take Wilson, that Fields should be the number 2. And so I'm going off that by thinking, well, if he's the second best quarterback, and
but if they're completely not sold on Jalen Hurts, that's the only way that would make sense. But I still think that you're going to have to give up a king's ransom just to get up there as it is. So you need to be 100% sure that Jalen Hurts isn't the guy and that Justin Fields is the guy.
Gotcha. Lawrence 1, Wilson 2, Mac Jones 3. Would you take him 3?
No, I would not. I would go Trey Lance.
I love just getting your reactions. The first time I asked you about Mac Jones, you're the whoa. That was great. And now here, even on draft day, that it looks like it could be a realistic. Do you think that it's all a smokescreen and they go with somebody else?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if it goes Zach Wilson at 2 and either Trey Lance. I think it's probably going to be Trey Lance, but Trey Lance or Justin Fields at 3. I think it is a smokescreen. And you talk about what's a smokescreen, what's real. I mean, you have to sort of decipher between the two. And I think in this particular case, Mike, I just don't see how any team could fathom or could think that Mac Jones is a better quarterback than Justin Fields or Trey Lance.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, number 4, in the InsideTheBirds.com mock draft, you went with Kyle Pitts. Do you think they take Pitts or they trade?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I think they're going to probably hang tight and maximize that window for Matt Ryan and give him that versatile offensive weapon to pair with Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. And I think that if you're going to make a final run, a final push with Matt Ryan, it would make a lot of sense. And when you, obviously, as we talked about here before, Pitts is not just a tight end. He's a weapon that you can move around the entire offense and add another dimension to that offense. So, I mean, I think that would make a great deal of sense there. Also, quarterback possibly there as well. So you talk about Matt Ryan getting up there in age.
All right. Now, this was Inside the Birds. You guys did a mock draft, you, Mosher, and Kaplan. So Cincinnati, Mosher went with Chase. Kaplan went with Penei Sewell, which I think is a mistake. Cincinnati has to take Penei Sewell, don't they? They have to, Andrew.
Yes.
I implore them to. I implore them to.
I agree with you, and I agreed with Adam on that night where we did that. It just makes too much sense. Protect your quarterback. You already saw what having a paltry offensive line can do to you got to protect your investment, right? I mean, Joe Burrow is your guy. You owe it to him to give him the proper protection, and I think the Bengals cannot afford to botch this one. Don't overthink it. Grab Sewell, plug him right in, and then start to build that offensive line the correct way.
Totally agree. All right, Miami goes Sewell. Up next, you took Jalen Waddle for Detroit. So Detroit gets into the wide receiver game here in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, they can go a number of ways as well, but when you look at their receiving core, Brashad Perryman, Tyrell Williams, those are two guys that, they're a little bit banged up. You don't want to go into a season with them as your starting wide receivers. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. And Waddle adds speed. He can affect all three levels of the field. He's just an explosive player. He would make a ton of sense there. I know a lot of people that prefer Waddle over Devontae Smith, so it certainly would be a nice pick for Detroit if they were able to come away with him.
All right, up next, Carolina. Kaplan went with Schlater, the guard, at 8 for Carolina. Mosher took Fields for Denver. I would imagine Fields would be ecstatic if that is the case. And then you went with Patrick Surtain. So in this mock draft, you think they like Surtain more than they like Horn?
Yeah, well, I mean, I also think that Carolina would be a contender for a Patrick Surtain, and I thought that Horn would be available for Dallas. So, I mean, it all depends. Like, I didn't necessarily think that Patrick Surtain would be there at that particular spot. So, and that's and if the Eagles, like I say, if the Eagles really want one of these guys, Mike, don't just assume that one of them's going to be there at 12. You're going to have to get in front of the Dallas Cowboys to secure them.
All right, and then Micah Parsons to the Giants. Adam Kaplan took J.C. Horn to Philadelphia. So let's jump you into that spot at 12. Your official pick with what's in your mind. Forget what happened in this mock draft. Who does Philadelphia take at number 12?
Well, based on the way I sort of foresee the board shaking out, I think the Eagles are going to take Rashawn Slater.
Rashawn Slater, the guard from Northwestern. Now, I said this earlier. I think there'll be a lot of broken TVs tonight if that happens, right?
Yeah, but, kind of just given the Eagles' history and their propensity to build through the trenches, and I think that they're going to sit there and say, we love his versatility, we can plug him in at guard, et cetera, et cetera. But, even still, if you're taking a guard at 12 is a little egregious, but, that kind of fits what the Eagles, look for, and they like to build through the trenches, and I can certainly see that happening if the corners go a little bit earlier than they think. Or, like I said, if they don't like the value, if they're not crazy about that, if they don't go Slater, I could see them trading down and going with getting a corner in the form of Greg Newsome II, or possibly a Kwity Paye, which Kwity Paye would not excite the fan base much like Rashawn Slater.
All right, there you go. Andrew DiCecco, football at 4. He thinks Rashawn Slater will be the pick for the Eagles at number 12. And, of course, he, like all guests, appear via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. I don't think the Eagles fans would be happy about that, but probably a smart, solid pick. I particularly don't like an offensive lineman at number 12. If you trade back and get one, I'm a little better with it. I think their offensive line can get them through this year. You can always find a good, solid guy in the draft, lineman's a spot that you can get guys. The Eagles are good at finding guys later in the draft, but I kind of understand that's the way they have built this thing. So we'll recap it all tomorrow here on the Sports Bash. All right, Andrew, enjoy the draft tonight, pal.
You too, Mike. Talk to you soon.
All right, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Draft coverage here on the Sports Bash. It's brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call. 4 convenient locations to serve you. Online, gmslaw.com. All right, I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports